here, what's the relation, the deeper relation to the Council of Nicaea? The point about the Christophanic, this is a term I think Father Bogdan introduced, the Christological exegesis of the theophanies. It is clear that now scholars of Christian origins started openly claiming that we could look at Christianity did not, as some people say, evolutionary in the second, third, fourth century, and the councils kind of shaped what Christianity will be. They were saying that it happened with the apostles right there, and it was just kept being articulated over the years. It worked, the reference to Christ as being the second person of the Trinity who appeared in the Old Testament as the angel of the Lord was used in the debates with the Gnostics, with the modalists and so on. But this was a secondary collateral application of those things. So the question is still open, did it play any role in the Nicene debates? And what people have emphasized that actually St. Athanasius is using this term in 359 in his writings on the synods. When he describes the issue with the Arians, with everything, he refers directly to the experience of Jacob, where he, in Genesis 32, where Jacob fights with a man, and then he says, I have seen the Lord. And he's using this argument to make exactly the point that the Son is proper of the same essence of the Father. And this is why the term homoousios is proper. It's right, it's orthodox. And the key point here is that this reference to those Christophanic manifestations in the Old Testament, they are used in the dogmatic context, not just a complementary thing, but this was one of the key arguments when he was referring to the Arians and to their adherents. So latest literature specifically, what happened a month ago when I realized that there will be the colloquium, you told me the topic, I contacted Father Bogdan. I said, I know what you write. Is there anything that relates the Christophanic, your kind of a understanding to Nicaea? He replies with a PDF. Just completed this chapter that will appear in 3 months, and he sent me something related to Nicaea, and so he addressed those particular issues, and he has a couple of articles in the last 3 months, 6 months, referring to how St. Athanasius was actually using the reference to the theophanic experiences as part of his argument in the context of Nicaea. What's interesting is that it is a fact that during the councils, first, second, and so on, the language became more technical. It got, at the beginning, it was the issue how Christ could be one of the three. Then, in the Christological debates, the issue was how he could be two natures. There is the essence of Christian theology is the oneness of the Trinity and the double nature of the one Christ. This is what is the paradox and the challenge for people to, and this is what makes Orthodox theology unique. The fact that Christ is consubstantial with the Father according to his divinity, and the fact that we are consubstantial with Christ according to his humanity. This is the fundament of Christianity. Why? This narrative disappeared over the years, and it was left only in hymnography, in the icons, and not that much. And there is a critical point which seems to have depleted the power of this narrative. And this was St. Augustine. After Augustine, he changed the patristic understanding by emphasizing that all the revelations of in the Old Testament were creations, and this is we're not trying to create a theory. It is documented in the Trinity. He's very clear about this. He says he created temporarily things to show, or it was a physical something. We're not trying to blame St. Augustine about something. He wrote it and explained it multiple times. But because the West was following mostly St. Augustine, kind of this narrative was diminished in some way over the centuries, and now I believe it's kind of regaining its relevance again. And here, of course, I would like to refer to Father John Romanidis. Everything that I said is part of his textbook. He has a chapter on the Trinity. He refers to Christ. He describes all this. I wrote to Father Hogden and said, why don't you refer to Romanidis? He said, I know, he has so many insights, but when you talk to scholars, I need the reference. I need the, of course I mention, but when we argue with people, Protestants or others, scholars need the proper reference, the proper, and so on. So they all acknowledge, including Bishop Colloquium. I'll finish with the last point. During this course, when Father Bogdan was teaching at St. Paul, one of the students raised his hand and said, Father, it's so nice to have a course by an Orthodox priest, on such an Orthodox topic. And he said, you don't need to be Orthodox to believe this, what I'm teaching. It is Orthodox. However, all the point here is that the scholars of Christian origins now are making this a relevant knowledge. So in this sense, yes, we Orthodox believe this, and this is part of what we believe, but you don't need to be Orthodox in order to believe it. So don't grant me the authority just because I'm Orthodox. I'm playing here a role that goes beyond the Orthodox because this is the essence of Christianity. Thank you. Theological trajectories. Yeah, I wrote to Father Dragos Julia. I said, this is key. He identified this theological trajectory by saying people use a terminology, a vocabulary. This vocabulary usually includes biblical terms, some metaphysical terms such as hypostasis. Hypostasis coming from Aristotle, I believe it's a term that existed before. They have the ways they use those particular terms and how they fit them to articulate their story. And then he takes this framework, I would say, and try to apply it to the people in Antiochia. And he says, for them, Ousia meant this, therefore they couldn't apply it at the same time to the Father and to the Son. For the Nicaeans, it meant the one essence, and they were saying there were one Ousia or hypostasis. So, but I have the reference, and I can send it's a part of a paper and part of his book. His book is relatively expensive, 150, 60, but there are papers that could be shared that really classify. And he applied this to those councils, 268, that condemned Paul of Samosata, Nicaea, and Constantinople, to so-called Trinitarian. So I think that he works now to apply this on the Christological Ephesus and afterwards. But it's not that something radically new, but it's a way to structure to understand a little bit more. And based on this, he practically said that he's trying to see who was actually Orthodox, even though they were not very clear in their terminology. It helps him to understand why St. Athanasius and the Cappadocians, they accepted people being Orthodox, even though they disagreed with them earlier. Just because they understood why they use a particular term and in what context, and they understood that this meaning has to be reloaded, so to say, with a new meaning. This refers a little bit to apophatic theology. In the Orthodox Church, apophatic theology is not just using negative terms to articulate infinite, uncreated, or something. The apophatic attitude, as Christos Yanaras says, it is assuming, accepting that truth cannot be articulated with words alone. You cannot detach truth from the experiential realm. So words will be never enough to articulate a particular deeper reality, even in science. Niels Bohr, the inventor of quantum mechanics, which we actually celebrate 100 years this year, Niels Bohr was very bad in words, and people could not understand exactly what he was saying. One of his disciples was Heisenberg, Werner Heisenberg. And people asked Heisenberg, why is Bohr speaking so complex? His words are, and he says, people accuse Bohr of having problem with words, but they don't really understand what was going on. He was trying to invent a language. They were trying to talk about something that looks like a particle, and sometimes it looks like a wave. And they did not have the words for those things. They had this is a particle, and here is a wave. But they didn't have the experience of having something that could be one or the other, depending on a particular situation. And he says he was trying to invent a new language, perfectly knowing that it's not going to do the job. This is an apophatic statement in 1970 by Heisenberg, who was trying to articulate what was Bohr dealing with, trying to express, to articulate something new. This is why I keep talking to the quantum physicists, that they actually are dealing with an apophatic problem. They still need to find the words, and I really believe that given all the experience of the church, from the First Ecumenical Council up to later, the church has developed a terminology that is highly applicable could be highly valuable to the sciences. All the idea of distinguishing between the individual, the common, the mode of existence, the terms hypostasis, ousia, thesis, mode of existence, what else? There were a couple more, but those are the core that they were using both for God and for the created reality. This wasn't just the way they speak, for them. Apophatism is also applicable to the created world. We are apophatic beings also.
Uh-huh. So you use that phrase.
Yeah.
A union of nature ontologically. How do you interpret that expression, and how does that relate to the phrase or the Fifth Ecumenical Council reference to the hypostatic union? And does that relate to what Father John Romanidis refers to, the distinction between the essence and the energies? So how do you interpret that? Because I've never heard of that expression.
I must say that I'm always uncomfortable whenever I hear the word ontological, because many people use it. You use it,
There's so many meanings.
I remember I was reading Metropolitan John Zizulis, God bless his soul. He also refers to, yes, but we cannot do ontology. And I said, and then what if we cannot do ontology? Why is it so important that we cannot? So whenever I hear ontology, I'm a little bit suspicious of, kind of nervous a little bit. But in Father John's terms, ontologically means in what sense he is really God. I think that this is what he means. Him being a man, and he says he assumed a form the form, I think it's Murphy, so of a man, not considering being less than, and so on and so on. So this, what he really means is, and Father John Patrick is not a philosophically oriented theologian. As Father George Dragos was saying, there are some philosophers who are theologically driven and some theologians who are philosophically driven. I think Father John Patrick is the true theologian. So I think in his case, he really means in what way he was really God. This is what he means. And how is this related to hypostasis? And, it's a long conversation.
Thank you for this, Dr. Tadev. I'm fascinated by the question of the difficulties with precision of language in developing concepts that are profound and novel. And I see this as a particular problem with some of the highest grade Greek literature that we've seen since antiquity. I see this in pagan Greek literature, and particularly Thucydides, where you have like very new concepts being explained for the very first time, and you have clauses upon clauses. And I see this again, and here's sort of the question for you. If I'm right to see what I think that I'm seeing, I see this a little bit also in Saint Maximus the Confessor. And I'm wondering if I'm right to see this, where you have very, very complicated sentences trying to with clauses built upon clauses, and all of this is to get to a concept that is very, very spiritual, but has not properly been expressed before. I was hoping you can comment a little bit on that.
Referring to Saint Maximus is absolutely legitimate, because he was one of the most articulated one to articulate what hypostasis will see mean. He has like a dictionary of, if you want to get deeper into the words, he's the one who really integrated all the terminology until then. So in this sense, that doesn't make him less challenging to read. But if you read him, deeply and carefully, you will see all those words already taking flesh, kind of being crystallized enough. I have a friend, a philosopher who is a Byzantine philosopher. His book will appear soon from the Gruyter or in Europe. So he believes that Byzantine philosophy became articulated by Saint Maximus. When you start reading Saint Maximus, and then Saint John of Damascus, then Saint Photius, Saint Gregory Palamas, you can see kind of the articulation of the terminology that people started kind of refining more and more. But there was already, after the first 5 ecumenical councils, there was already enough work on the terms, so that they became a little bit more clearer.
Hello, Doctor. Thank you for the presentation. A question maybe not directly related, but can we say that the other churches, the Monophysite or Miaphysite or Nestorians, did they use the same traditions, or they derive from one tradition alone? For example, the Antiochian one, which they continued developing under the Antiochian one, and then the Alexandrian one. Like, what happened to these non-Orthodox tradition?
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting question, because actually a lot of the problem was, again, the terminology.
Exactly.
If at the beginning it was how to speak about the Trinity and how Christ is one of it, and what's the relation between the man and the second person of the Trinity, later on the issue became how Christ could incorporate 2 natures.
Exactly.
And then became the distinction on the energy, because everybody was linking one nature to one energy. And if there were 2 natures, there must be two energies. And for them, it was the issue. Then, if we have one being, how can we actually speak about one activity and so on and so on? So, and ultimately, when the discussions between the Oriental churches and the other, it is about clarifying the terms.
But still, the energies, I think the Copts will say there's only one energy. I think they're very they can accept two natures, but one energy is more difficult, I feel.
And they define it in a special way, not, but still, saying just by the invitation here, I think using Father Dragoș's, theological trajectory, and I'm sure he will write soon, this will clarify really what the issues were and potentially kind of give some basis for further things. Because he demonstrates why after the 360, the council was 325, and after 350 started councils in Sardica, Philippopolis, Smyrna, that people started seeing who is actually semantically close to each other and so on. And this was the help that saw that actually people are see the Orthodox enough to be in one camp.
Yes,
but I believe that this is still work to be done. Father John Romanidis believes that all the work between the Oriental and the other churches is done. It's clarified, just need to be acted on. So people believe that the work on the terminology is already...
So the faith will be the same, but the words are not, exactly. So that's the Romanidis...
Ultimately, I think this is what we believe. That doesn't mean that it's the done job, but there was a lot of work done, especially by Father John Romanidis when he was part of those conversations, Father George Dragas, Father George Florovsky, and so on.
Thank you.
Make one comment, one short comment on that. That this is actually, the role of not only language and definition and specifics of language, but also of other other components, political components, other kind of determinants of the social life had a huge role in misunderstandings. And that brings me to what Father Athanasios said earlier about the humility that the synodal process, brings, that if there is no consensus, each one of us has to reconsider what they think and what it may mean, and go and search deeply to discover other points of reference that may bring us all together and may actually create a consensus. So that humility and that interest that continues and goes on, this is what, as a process, leads to consensus and understanding, because the schisms between, like the Chalcedonians, like John in the previous course, went very far to explain how, these things happen and how the separation, this is not the same council, but how separations of churches happen because of cultural and language differences and misunderstandings. So, that was...
agree. This is part of the theological trajectory, the context, the political, it's an additional kind of a factor.
Yeah.
My question is for Dr. John. It's about the Father Athanasios presentation. He mentioned that, and I was very surprised to hear this, like there's 318 bishops that, that show up at the council. And there was, at the time, 1,500 bishops. Were they all invited and they chose not to come?
Yeah.
You can understand that, they make the effort to invite everybody. There's no doubt about this.
The last
No, the first, 325. But many of them they couldn't find. Many of them they couldn't have the proper record that he is a bishop, he is not a bishop. There is all kind of cases like that. And there are many that they couldn't for whatever reason, or travel or give their time, and et cetera, et cetera. But no matter what, that is a unique possibility that so many appear out of the blue from before. And that was considered very successful, compared, etc. But Father Athanasios gave you also some numbers, back and forth, etc. And the percentages of, bishop versus faithful at that time and this time, and the difference, which for me was very, very profitable, was in his presentation, he gave us a lot to reflect. How you're supposed to relate the council, not any historical event, but with us today. There is an absolute relationship, and the more that we realize, how far, how close we are to different things, then, of course, we have the concept sometimes that what is church organization? Is to have a parish council. No, that's a modern thing, Is that really the reality of what's supposed to be when we gather together? Is this the common mind to discuss our common problems, who will do this and who will do the other? So if we end up into that, we have to return back into the synod and see what happened. What was this the case? What has been discussed? How they came up to decisions, which is absolutely beautiful. You see, in the ancient Greece, they develop all kinds of systems. And they figure out at the end that the best system is democracy. At least everyone to have his opinion, and then at the end, because we have different opinions, the one who is the majority wins. That's not the Orthodox concept. The Orthodox concept is consensus. And they say consensus patrum. Even if we don't have a difference, if we can come together at the end and have a common decision, that means that between us there is a Holy Spirit. That's the difference. It's a huge difference. The world today, or the common society, or the common state, or Quebec, they cannot understand this. They live in a kind of reality that, against secularism, against this, against the other. Why? Because they didn't have an appreciation of what is consensus mean. It is the proper understanding. Yes. Yeah. And we have consensus patrum because thousands of fathers of the church, but we see something common among them. And that's what unites them. That's what makes the church church, Otherwise, it will be a gathering of communities, of people that they have a common interest, which is not the case. It's not the social club, It's not that. It's a part that identifies that the solution of the problem is Christ. And it's not me and you. We can have my opinion, we can have your opinion, we can discuss it, we can debate it, but let's come to the common sense, which is at the end a body, which is Christ. It is fantastic. If we can achieve that, it's much better than any kind of democracy that you can find in this world. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Tanak. It was really interesting, your presentation. You cited a lot of books and authors that I admit most of them I didn't know. Would it be possible to send the list, and maybe Dr. John could share with us? Because everything looks so very interesting to read. Thank you so very much.
Yes, if there are other comments or questions while you're thinking, I'm just going to say that about consensus, which is a very difficult term, one of the factors that creates consensus is the Holy Spirit, and this is what makes the difference in the Synod. Because it is not just having, the same goal. We often gather in a room, and many of you in your work setting or whatever, you try to create consensus. We try to create consensus in our own family, and it is so difficult, even though we are in the same family and we love each other very much, and still we cannot get to consensus about something. But the difference is that in synodal processes, at least everyone, not only the ones who are gathered there, the 318 bishops, but everyone, all around them, their priests, their deacons, everyone prays for the Holy Spirit to guide them. And this is what creates the humility that can help me recognize that maybe I was wrong, that maybe what the other person says next to me is better. And who are the ones who actually created or came up with, the words about creating the consensus? They were holy people. And I think Stoyan talked about the experience. When they realize in the breaking of the bread, their eyes are opened. They're opened because this is when the experience hits them. They've seen the Lord breaking the bread. And this is a unique thing that the Lord has done that makes them feel and think a certain way, and it opens their minds. So experience is a big thing. This is why we're talking about faith. There is a part of that that is not explainable. Like you said, more could they try to explain how one moment this is a molecule, and the next a wave, and the next moment is a quantum. This, you cannot conceive or see it in your eyes, or in your mind, how it could be the same thing, how it transforms, and when is what. But having the experience of what the energy tells you, this is what helps and moves everyone to develop that consensus. And I think that it is a very important part of the, homoousion and understanding these senses. Just like some of our, forefathers who did not have all the theological education and did not have PhDs or anything, but they were able to not only conceive these very complicated terms, but actually live them in their lives. And we recognize them as sense today all around us. So, yes, I don't know if there are other comments or questions.
So in this sense, you can ask the terminology in fifth level,
Yeah,
and you may not know the terminology, but know everything.
exactly.
With the Holy Spirit is like this. You don't need words.
Yeah, for those who are Greek or speak Greek or in the room, for the time being, there is a very nice series on Saint Paisius, which actually, I would say strangely, very well done, that shows, how someone who hadn't finished elementary school was a saint and how he lived his life. And it's extremely inspiring. And how even Saint Spiridon, who was one of the less educated people there when he took the brick, like how does someone come up with these notions who doesn't have any high education, who doesn't have degrees and things, because the lived experience and the communication of Father Athanasius said that the synod is about the First Ecumenical Council was about the relationship between father and son. It is true. It is in our lives, between our relationship with God, and this is what changes everything. Totally transforms and helps us conceive all this. So if there are no other comments or questions, I will ask John to take.
As every year, we do close to the end of the colloquium. I'm presenting to you, you heard from Tanef there, Stoyan. Stoyan Tanef will be one of our new professors at the university, as new recruit from Ottawa, and from next year he will give courses on the program, and the program will be increased. So at that point, I am referring to some new books that are out. And the first one is an extremely important text of Father Vasilios, the abbot of Viviran Monastery in Mount Athos. That was 25 small volumes that we produced the last 20 years of his writings. And because of the incredible demand that happened to these 24 small books, then we decided to put them all together in a 3-volume set and present it as a complete set of his work. It's unbelievable to say that these 25 books in Greek, when they been published in Greece, they had a circulation of about 15 to 20,000 copies in Greece. In the last 25 years, we sold 200,000 of these in North America. Some of them are on the 10th editions. And we did it in a proper way now, in 3 volumes, in a whole set. And we got the prize in 2022 of UNESCO of the best book on Orthodox theology. That incredible book for Father Vasilios, the abbot of Viviran Monastery, it's available to you in a nice cassettine, and is probably, I consider personally perhaps, that is the most advanced Orthodox theologian alive today. Father Basilius. So if you believe it, at least a little bit of what I'm saying, that is something that you have to have, even on the smaller sections of the book or on the actual big one. The second and third book that I will try to show you today, there are two books that came out the last month. And both of them are very unique. The first one is called Upon This Rock. And this is done in St. John, Newfoundland, in Canada, by a wife of a priest there, Matushka Konstantina. And wrote this book, Upon This Rock, Missionary Reflections of an Orthodox Priest's Wife. The wife of a priest in a small community in St. John, Newfoundland. And this is with the father, her husband. And his reflections, how he's supposed to take a small parish which has 4 or 5 people when they started, and how they grew up, in the years, and how they attract the people, and what was their reflections. An excellent thing which is 100% Canadian, as you can see. The third book that I want to show you today is a very unique book. It's called From Unbelief to Faith. That is written by Father Valentin Svetnitsky, which was an unknown Russian priest that died in the gulags. And his life was incredible. We don't know too much details, but we know that he wrote a book. And that book was a discussion, dialogues between an unbeliever and him as a priest. And these are fantastic dialogues that we can use it for catechism, we can use it to give it to people that they have doubts, they have whatever. And that book was existing till yesterday only in Russian. So a priest in the States took it and make the whole thing to translate it into English. And that's what we published this last, and there are a number of copies downstairs. It's a fascinating story, or a modern catechism, even in now modern Russia. There are many more books. As you can see, we have brought for you quite a few down. You are welcome to see them. You are welcome to consult them. You are welcome to buy them. Most of you know, but this, what we brought here was, a couple of 100 books. We have 3,000 in Montreal, different titles. There's no title that exists and we don't have it. So it's only your interest. You have an interest, you'll find them. You'll ask and will be given. That's what it's all about. We have access, thank God, through the modern ways, to all what is existing in the present times in many languages. So all depends on the interest. There is no any more excuse. I don't do this, I don't speak this, I don't, And recently we established different companies in different countries. I have one in Romania that they do translation in Romanian from books that we send it to them. We have another company in Russia that we send them books to translate and publish in Russian, and so on and so on. And we have to do more as we can on this kind of level, because the world is needing this information, is needing this food we provide one way or another. Closing remarks for this colloquium for today. You have on your dossiers there a number of papers which are related to the Institute of Orthodox Theology. Those who are not members, they can write this page and become a member. You don't need anything else. Just to become a member, you have to give this paper. There is no fees, there is nothing else. If you are members, you will be receiving information, you will be receiving a notice for books, for activities, for any kind of stuff. So it is worthy. At the same time, we created a number of years ago a sort of a fund as a foundation for the Institute, which is called St. Justin Popovich. Into that you can if you want and if you have and if you can, contribute financially to this. We're using these funds because from experience, and I have quite a few experience for many, many years, there are people that they want to take courses and they have very great interest in Orthodox theology and they don't have the money. So, do I have to stop them to not have this interest? No. I say to them, take the course and we'll find the money. And we're asking people around to help. And if, they fund and they help. So in this way, we're creating a fund to help people that they have an interest and they cannot do it one way or another. We don't judge them. We don't tell them why this, why the other. Simple questions and simple answers. So there is a paper inside with that related to St. Justin Popovich Fund. For those who want to contribute, contribute. As also on your papers, you have the courses for this semester that started already this week. The course goes on Eucharist, and I know a lot of people are taking it. And then we have new courses for September, from the fall, and you have the list. Be part of that incredible thing that is happening in Montreal. There is no single city in North America that has this ability. There are 2 or 3 seminaries all across North America. There is no such a thing like us related to the university, giving official degrees, and have the ability to teach only Orthodox theology and nothing else. Whatever the university was interfering and say, you have to do this, you have to do the other, no, we don't listen to them. We are doing what we're supposed to do. And you accept us or you don't. And they do, so far. So, it's a unique opportunity. You'll see, we try to expand. We'll bring people now from Ottawa, from Toronto. There is one person this semester that is taking the course that I started this week, which is from Dubai. And he's taking the course through the Zoom, because we are giving it through Zoom. But it's up to you. It's up to how you feel and how you understand. The point is that, if you reflect, these programs that don't come like that. Suddenly we have the opportunity to do it here in Montreal, and we're very thankful to God and to each one of you from what we're doing. So look at the papers and you'll have the time to feel what you have to feel. Particular thanks today for all the wonderful speakers that they came and they gave us their thoughts and etc. Archbishop Irineu was supposed to come here, but probably something happened to him and he couldn't come. Particular also thanks to many people that help here, Leslie and Judge, Ellen, Maria, Artemis, Paul, and Joanna and Peter, Ian, of course. They prepare all the food. There's plenty of food down. You can go for a coffee because only at 5 o'clock is the Vespers here. And you'll have an access to see again the books and buy and see whatever you like. And of course, many, many thanks to all of you, faithful participants of the yearly Colloquium, especially those who come outside Montreal. Please embrace the Institute, be involved, become members, become sponsors, whatever you like, become contributors. All together, we are making history here in Montreal. Help us that the witness of the Orthodox faith will shine in Montreal and in Canada. Christ is risen. Christos Anesti. Christe resuscité. Please come down and enjoy for an hour down. Paiste Voskes. Vespers is at 5 for those who want to stay here at the church. Please come down and see the books and have a coffee and drinks, plenty for you. Yes. I'm going to remember.
I'm beloved Dr. Fidesz. This was Excellent today, and Harika Pusasina.
Να
I
είστε
have
καλά.
one question about,
Yes.
about the donation and the purpose of the donation. Όταν βοηθάτε φοιτητές που θέλουν να πάρουν μάθημα, are you talking about registering at like